Hi, everyone. Hi. Let me mute.
Oh,
Hi, everyone. My name is Patricia Carrier. Welcome to the Schools and Education meeting for May. It's about 6:33. I want to wait a few more minutes to see if we have quorum, and I think we will.
Ed's here, Anne's here.
And yeah, so I think we do have quorum. Thank you, guys. Can everyone hear me? All right, and then if you wouldn't mind making
Yes.
myself and Mar.
Amara will be co-host and you'll.
Okay, great. And thank you. The agenda this evening that we will be discussing is about,
What is the title of the meeting?
yeah, I see everybody, hold on. And I want to introduce you to our education committee members. The title or the agenda of our meeting is Empowering Youth Voices, Advancing the Vote Movement in New York City and New York State. Again, my name is Patricia Laria, Chair. I want to introduce our committee members. I see Ann Hager on the screen. If you could wave, she's our Vice Chair of School. Hi, Ann. Ed Ma.
good evening.
Hi, Ed. And I believe Rich will be joining us virtually because he's in London. And then
Oh,
to my right is Jean Berger. She's our committee member. To my left, Mark Fitzgerald. And further down the table is Emma Smith. And I believe that's everyone I can see on our committee. And I believe we have quorum, and over to my right is our speaker this evening, guest speaker, Al
Corland.
Berlin. Welcome.
Thank you.
And he is our speaker this evening about this topic. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah, so again, my name is Al Kurland, and I am a 40-year veteran of youth service work, starting with my work in a school for emotionally disturbed and mentally handicapped kids. I did that for 22 years. And I have a second career also for 22 years in neighborhood youth services, where I did after-school programming with grassroots organizations, and then I did teen programming with the Police Athletic League. It was my latest endeavor in not-for-profits. I also have some history in working in advocacy. So from 2007 until 2014, I was one of the few grassroots people that worked with then Councilperson Gail Brewer to lower the voting age from 18 to 16 for community board members. So initially, actually back then in 2006, we had been floating a proposition to lower the voting age to 16. And people generally said, you must be out of your mind. So, we came up with this was actually a resolution that had been passed by a high school congress. 300 high school students from around the city of New York would come to a congress once a year that was hosted by a group called the Future Voters of America. So after they saw that the legislation was going nowhere, Gail Brewer came back to the group and said, why don't you come up with a compromise? And they came up with the compromise of lowering the voting age from 18 to 16 community boards. And we thought it was going to be a slam dunk, because what was being talked about, the legislation only allowed 2 16 and 17-year-olds per board, and 59 boards is 118. They would have to be pretty exceptional 16 and 17-year-olds to take on this load of work. But it was a load of work getting people to see that even that could happen. You know, the first few years, it was kind of like running through cement. And then in 2012, an organization called a Generation Citizen, they came on board, and they had youth groups in high schools and middle schools all over the city. So they came on board and they developed an advocacy package. We went to the city council and got a resolution of support passed. I think the vote was something like 49-2, you know, in the city council. And then once the state saw how strongly the city felt about it, then it went up to the state legislature. And after languishing for 6 years, it passed in 6 weeks. Yeah, Andrew Cuomo was the governor at the time. We passed it in June, and he signed it in August. And initially, we had a fairly good response. I think we had 25 or 30 teens of that age, you know, joining boards. And then it kind of leveled off and dropped a little bit. And then COVID kind of put everything into a mess. So now we're back, we want to start again with the community board thing also, and try to get that up and running again for both community boards and also community education councils within the Board of Ed. Right now, you could be 16 years of age to be a member of a community council, but you can't vote. So we want to change that. You know, we feel that it's an equal vote to an adult member, especially since they're mandated to be on the committee. They should be treated as a responsible person. So I retired from PAL in 2020 after 22 years, and I was helping other organizations start up teen councils. And at the end of 2012, I discovered there was legislation in Albany to lower the voting age from 18 to 16. But nobody I spoke to had any idea that the legislation existed, which is not so atypical of what happens in Albany. A lot of good legislation that remains unknown, you know, to the general public. So there was a group of us that had been with Future Voters and with PAL. We decided just to do a volunteer initiative to bring publicity to the fact that the legislation exists, and also to try to create support, but start at a grassroots level. So they meant civic organizations and local communities and community boards, because we wanted to start from the ground up, and if we could gain support, you know, then we move on to bigger things, you know, once we got support at the local level. So far, I mean, we've been a committee of just 4 people and a few volunteers. We've been to 13 community boards. 1 was a no vote. 2 can't make up their minds, and they'll come back to us later. And the other 10 have given us letters of support, you know, for the vote 16. So that's where that stands right now. We've also gotten individual support letters. So oddly enough, we got a letter of support from the League of Women Voters in Maine. New York is it's a much larger organization, so they're still trying to study it and make up their minds. So League of Women Voters, both Maine and Massachusetts, have come on board. We have Dr. Robert Fullylove, who is a professor at Columbia's Mailman School of Health. He's also the director for community and minority affairs. So he's given us a letter. And, you know, being a resident of Washington Heights, I decided to go to my own elected people first. So we have 2 assemblymen, 1 state senator, and 2 council people, and they have all given us letters of support. So I guess I'm spoiled. You know, Washington Heights and Inwood at that type of support. And we've also gone to 2 borough presidents, Mark Levine and Donovan Richards. And each of them have given us letters of support. So we had to get to the other 3 borough presidents. So now We have Generation Citizen USA, who has a New York chapter, and they also have a presence throughout New York State. And there's an organization we just heard from recently, a Generation Vote. They do voter registration for 18 to 25-year-olds all over the state of New York. And when they heard about our campaign, they met with Generation Citizen, and they said, we want to host, the movement. And we already work with a lot of college students and high school students in civics and voter registration. So why not make them the leaders? Grandpa Al can finally be an ally and not doing things just as a senior citizen. So that's brand new. We plan to meet in beginning of June, plan out a 3-month strategy, and then do advocacy at the city council, the same as we did with the community board issue. We feel that if we can get the community board, the city council on board, and continue to have young people go to community boards and civic organizations, you'll get a firm base. And I don't want to run over my time, so a mini history lesson about what has happened in the past. And you mentioned 1971. Okay, up until 1971, people have been trying since World War I to lower the voting age to 18. And the argument was they do military service 18, how come they can't vote?
Despite old enough to
Right.
vote.
So didn't really go anywhere after World War I. It got a little traction after World War II, but it kind of fizzled out. But then with all the controversy over the war in Vietnam, it got a lot of attention. And we had a lot of fatalities and injuries. And people on both sides of the aisle finally said, this is not fair. Can't have people's lives being destroyed. They don't have the right to vote. So it was actually Richard Nixon, who was a conservative Republican, who pushed the state legislatures, because you needed, 3/4 of the state legislatures to agree. He pushed them to agree, and he signed it into law in 1972 with, weird enough, bipartisan support. Figure that out, but that actually existed back then. So the Vote 16 legislation, as I said, was in Albany for 2 years before anybody found out about it. But there were other cities that have lowered the voting age, some of them for over a decade. So you have 7 cities in the United States, 6 of them in Maryland and 1 in Vermont that have lowered the voting age. And then you have municipalities in both South America, of Argentina and Chile and Ecuador, and there are 4 or 5 others. And then you have provinces and cities in Europe that have lowered the voting age for a decade, in England, in Germany, Scotland, and Wales, Austria. And what they have found both in the United States and also in Europe and South America are some interesting findings. One is a lot of the anxiety about whether 16 and 17-year-olds have the capacity to vote, both cognitively and also having the electoral knowledge. They found that they actually do. Because when they're given the opportunities to vote, they take the responsibility to find out why they should vote. Part of the problem now is not only teenagers 16, 17 in New York can't vote, we don't have civics and social studies courses throughout most of the high schools in New York City that teach things at a local level. The first introduction they get to government is federal government before they get introduction to New York City government. So there are organizations that have gone into the schools, like Generation Citizen and Global Kids, and an organization called Why Vote New York, that are working with high school students to study New York City civics and also the issues going on in New York City. Everything from school menus in the schools to police and youth relationships, but also authority relationships with the schools. Like only 27% of New York City public schools have student-led newsletters. Because principals don't want them, you know, to be honest. So there's a separate, you know, focus movement on that, getting student newspapers in every high school. But what we found is that when high school students are introduced to civic engagement at a local level, they get very, very engaged. So the problem is not having the capacity, it's having the invitation to participate, and also the allies, school teachers, guidance counselors, and parents, and other students that are very involved in civics through their different issue organizations, you know, that are teaching high school students about civics. And the finding has been, both in Europe and South America, but also in the United States, is that when 16 and 17-year-olds register, and then they vote, they come out at 4 times the rate of an 18, 19, and 20-year-old. And it's, you know, it's understandable because I actually remember being 18, 19 and figuring out where to go to school and had to start a job and, you know, all the stuff that a young adult has to think about, and voting is not a priority. But when you're 16, 17, you're still in school and you have support mechanisms. Now that 4-to-1 ratio does not maintain itself over subsequent elections, but it is about 2-to-1, even in the 4th election subsequent to the first one. So what the literature is showing is that when you start at 16, you have a better chance of making voting a habit of the mind and the heart. And you continue to vote after that, which is what we want to see, you know, from our American citizens. Not to come out and vote once, but to continually vote. The other thing that research has shown, but it doesn't pertain specifically to 16 to 17-year-olds, is there have been studies, there's one study, Oosterhoff, University of Montana, who worked with 4 other professors from UCLA and Rutgers, and you know, City University, is that when young people ages 21 to 29 have to deal with social media, they are 7 times less likely to be fooled by all these tricks, you know, that you see on the social media, because they're more savvy about the media. They actually study, you know, what social media does. Where older people are not that savvy, you know, social media, and are more prone to fake information. I'm not going to get political here because it's supposed to be nonpartisan, but without naming the name, and we have a whole movement in this country of people, the whole movement is based on, you know, fake information, and it's, you know, it's a pretty substantial number of voters in the country. So it's an electoral problem, not a youth problem. So, you know, that's basically my presentation. You know, what we're doing is, you know, continuing to go to boards, you know, soliciting letters of support. But again, as I previously mentioned, we're going to put together leadership, individuals from Generation Citizen, you know, Generation Vote, but other organizations, and there might be individual community board members, you know, that want to be a part of this. We're going to do a convening on June 4th, just to brainstorm and get ideas, and then put together a strategic calendar in June, July, and August to, you know, how to put together, you know, a campaign to make it effective, but also how to develop what we call a teenage ambassador program. Because one of the most frequent questions I get is, what is a senior citizen doing advocating for 16-year-olds? And you know, I tell people, you know, I'm about 40 years, but I'm still not a teenager. But I have worked with teenagers, but I'm not the source of the young people we're talking about. So we want to do that ambassador program, and we found, like, in the specific issue areas, when you do that, we have a lot of success. If you look at the high school students in Florida, you know, what they accomplished, and then you look at what the Dreamers accomplished, you know, getting respect for, you know, Latinos that were born here, but are, you know, are treated as people that don't deserve to be here. And we've had a little bit of success, but we still got to work on it in developing youth councils at police precincts. Because we have a huge problem in New York City of miscommunication, between police and young people. But what we found is when we do very focused work, and we have police officers sit down and communicate face to face with young people, they actually discover themselves as mutual human beings. And if they could get to that point where, hey, we all want the same thing. We all want peace in our community. We don't want guns in the community, et cetera, that police and young people could, do some good work together and helping that address that. So that's the model we want to use, for this subject.
Thank you for that overview in history. I just want to call out some, I see that Rich Cachapola has joined us.
Yes.
He's a committee member.
Hi, Rich.
Hi.
And an attendee, on the attendee list, we have Nicole Barth from member Eric Botcher's office.
Oh, okay.
We have representative there. The housekeeping rule is we are gonna first take questions from committee members.
Mhm.
And you'll respond, and then we'll go to the attendees if they have questions. I see that Francine, you had your hand raised. Is that a member that is with your organization? Francine? You said you had.
Oh, Francine Barris, yes, she's with me. Yeah. Hi, Fran.
Just did. Did you? Okay.
I don't want to be.
Does she wanna, I just did it. But anyway, let me go to Ann Hager, who has a hand raised. She declined, okay. And you have a question for Al?
I wanted to actually add like a comment, which is that our participatory budgeting in the city has an voting age of 11 and up. And having done participatory budgeting, collecting votes near schools, particularly around middle schools, the most engaged people that walked by the table were always those kids. And the adults and the sort of young adults, including people that I think were probably in like their 20s, would walk right by and pretend they didn't see us. The younger kids, like around 14, 15, they're probably not quite at the 16 age, were so interested and took the time to read through the whole thing and carefully choose, and they discuss it with the other kids. And, just anecdotally, it did seem to me like they were a lot less jaded and much more interested in really engaging with it. And so I'm just saying that's my observation of working with younger kids on voting.
Well, I appreciate you, sharing that observation, and it's a real life experience, kind of debunking the myth that young people are apathetic. It's the invitation; it's not the interest.
Absolutely. My kid's been doing, helping out, getting signatures for participatory budgeting since forever. I mean, she was like 7. I didn't know if she was allowed to, but she was. We had her out there. And, even more recently, Nicole's on. Eric Botcher is the District 3 council person,
Right.
which goes all the way up to Midtown where my kid goes to school. We live down here, but even more recently, we got participatory budgeting for her school to make it accessible, wheelchair accessible, and the kids were all over it. I mean, they really pushed, they got those signatures, and we won.
Right.
So,
Oh, congratulations.
kids are very civic, and for last school too, we did it.
Mhm.
Different district. But I mean, they're very engaged. And again, I'll speak for my own kid. She's been a member of our local Democratic club since she was 5 years old.
What?
She's
Oh, wow.
13 now, youngest member in history. Now we have a newborn member. We have baby Eden, who was just born, but before that, Regan was the youngest member. And she's out, she, it's not working, but she canvasses, even though she doesn't, she hangs out. She knows who all of her electeds are. She knows that if there's something she cares about, that there is an avenue for her to get it done, or at least where to go and who the decision makers are, And all kids should do that and understand their power.
Mhm.
And this is a great way to get them started.
I found myself a co-speaker here. Both of you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a
That's
essentially ignorant question just to understand the scope? So this would be the voting age for the city, but also the state,
And this, yeah,
the
because
state as well.
anytime you change election law in New York State, you gotta go through the state.
Okay, exactly.
I'm sorry, that's the one thing I'm neglecting to mention, and it'll be a process.
Yeah.
So what would happen is the legislature would have to, both chambers pass it.
Okay.
Then they would put a referendum on the ballot. And then after it's a referendum passed with a yes vote, then it would go back to the legislature for a second vote. And then the governor signs it and comes law. So it's work and it's a limited time, but you gotta start somewhere, you know?
Thank you.
You said earlier that, it lagged for 6 years before it picked up steam at the beginning of your presentation.
Right.
Why-
Are you talking about the community, I was talking about the community board one.
Community board. This was introduced, we saw Brad and Bobby Carroll. Was it
Yes.
Brad and Bobby Carroll, Senator Hoylman, and what is, he's also a senator,
He's a assemblyman.
Assembly Member Carroll.
Yeah, he's assemblyman.
Both introduced it,
Mm-hmm,
2022,
right.
2017. Is that right? Was it first 2017?
Maybe it was,
I looked it up. I saw that it had
right,
gone through, it died in the judiciary
right.
twice. And actually, I contacted, Senator Hoylman to ask these questions, why, what happened, where did we go wrong? Because if there was more information that we needed to put into a resolution to bolster,
Mhm.
then we needed to do that, but,
Right. That's why, yeah, I gotta read the
Why don't you-
resolution again.
he didn't do that.
What happened is initially, and this was as late as 2023, there were two companion bills. In the assembly, it was 274.
Yeah.
And the state senate, it was 660. And it basically said lower the voting age to 16 and also mandate 8 hours of civic education for every high school student in New York State. And that's the way the bill read. But what happened was the judiciary finally gave them the answer of why it was being held up. And the answer was there was no language to change the state constitution. So that's now, when you see what we're asking for is, we still have the 330, the 274 and the 660, but we've added 2562 in the Senate side, which simply says lower the voting age to 16 in the state constitution. And then a companion bill is 660 in the assembly side.
I see, yeah. Introduced 2017, 18 session, 19, 20, 21, 22.
Right, I didn't find out about it until the end of,
Now 23, 24.
yeah. That was sitting up there and it only got, those two extra bills only got added in 2023.
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Carroll's been, I think it's pretty typical, he's more successful in the assembly, getting co-sponsors to sign on.
Yeah.
Than Hoylman is in the Senate, but you can't assume that when we did the community board thing, the lead sponsor lowering the age to 16 was the state senator from Staten Island. Conservative Republican. Gail Brewer even talking private issues, don't share this with too many people. I'd rather work with him than a lot of the Democrats. Because even though he's a conservative Republican, he's nuts and bolts, he wants to get things done that can actually help people. And that's why he's co-sponsoring this bill. And the state Senate actually passed it before the assembly passed it. Initially, so can't just, assume allegiance because of party.
So you see, that's in our resolution, that 16-year-olds can do lots of things, including sit on a community board.
Right.
Right,
Very exciting.
I saw it. And thank you, Mark, for writing that resolution.
Yeah.
You said you've been going around to different community boards. How many have passed resolutions
So we-
or letters favor?
Right, so there's one that said an absolute no, that was the Ward 1 on Staten Island. And I have to
They said
say,
no?
They said no?
yeah, they said no,
Interesting.
right, but they were very polite and just that, and they told me, said, we really love what you're doing. They're gonna be honest, they love what I'm doing, but they said, what the phrase was, we're just not there yet.
Yeah, after this presidential election.
Yeah. The other two boards was just a question of, they said, we're conflicted and we don't know what to do.
Why were they conflicted?
But they had,
Nine passed it.
yeah, 9 boards passed it,
Where were those two boards?
Harlem, 9 and 10.
I didn't-
Now 9,
Really?
yeah, I know, it surprised me. I had counted it in my absolute yeses in my mind.
What committees did you go to?
The education and youth committees. So they never went to the full board, because they, one committee, Board 9, just, I've contacted them several times, I can't get an answer what's going on. And okay,
And
Board 10 was the one that said we're just conflicted, and the reason was, and I'm not gonna give his name, but he was not even on the youth committee. He was just a board member. And he says, I'm a social studies teacher. And I presented your idea to the class, 3 classes, and they all voted unanimously against it. Now, I don't like being rude to people, but I've worked with teenagers for 40 years. I've never had a unanimous decision in a group of teenagers. But I would like,
it was his presentation.
yeah, it was very, yeah.
That's what it seemed like. Rather
So,
than empowering, it seemed like a burden.
but to his credit, he didn't bring it to a no vote. He just said, we're just gonna leave it undecided. So there's still hope there, I think, if, I got, the leader of Mothers and Fathers Save, Jacqueline Rowe Adams. She does a lot of, work with families that have been victims of losing siblings or parents through violence. She wrote a really glowing letter. She's within that Board 10 area, so I'm gonna go back. The other boards were 11 and 12 in Northern Manhattan, voted yes.
Washington,
Edward. And boards 4 and 7, I call it the middle of the
Upper West Side.
side, voted yes. It was actually the chairperson of the Education Committee, Board 4, I think contacted,
Yeah.
mostly contacted you.
Yeah.
In the Bronx, we have 3 boards, when they all said yes. And then in Brooklyn, Community Board 8, Prospect Heights, Crown Heights, they voted yes.
That's a hard board, so good on you.
And that was probably our closest vote. It was about 23 yes and 11 no.
Every vote. at CB2.
Right.
So we have how many boards in,
In each borough,
yeah,
we have
4 in
12
Manhattan,
here.
yeah, 12,
we have
11,
13 in,
yeah, 11, 12, 4 and 7 in Manhattan. That's 4 boards in Manhattan, 3 in the Bronx and 1 in Brooklyn.
how many boards total together?
59.
59?
There are 59.
Oh, there's 59 community boards, yeah.
And 9 passed and.
Only
So-
50 to go.
Only 50 to go, so, when I first started doing the community boards, I definitely want all the community boards done, but I don't want to be the one doing it, which is why we're doing this. I'll go with a young person and support, but I should be an ally, but the young person should be doing the presentation.
Well, we had kids lined up.
Yeah, mine bails.
First failed, mine got sick. So I'm sorry,
Okay,
because we, are remiss to not have kids, but we did take informal polls around with the children that we know.
right,
We know a few kids, and overwhelmingly, that sounds cool. They get it and they love it, and I just think it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
All around. If this passes our full board, this resolution at committee and then full board, we should share it with all the other boards, maybe even with a note, like dear.
right, that would be great.
Because you know what? We find that if there is, something that we want to support in a particular community or at a particular committee, even, within our own board, helps a lot to bring the resolution.
Okay,
So if there's you come with a resolution, like I've done the work already, let me come make my case.
mhm,
It's
Right.
easier. It's just like when you have an idea about legislation for an elected, if you come with the good, it's
Right.
a lot easier to convince people rather than asking them to do all the
out of
work.
the clear blue and then thinking, actually, the original advocacy
Now you have
packet, yeah, the advocacy packet, I'm not gonna blame your board, because I'll be honest with you.
Yes, what if you-
Maybe in my mind, I sent it to you, and I'm running around doing a lot of things, so
I could have gotten lost.
it could have gotten lost and in my mind, I sent it to you. But in the advocacy packet, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hard copy your advocacy package, just so you have it. I have the resolutions from boards of 11 and 12 in Manhattan. The 3 in the Bronx. I have all the resolutions to support
We can
some,
put them down.
and your resolution is excellent, 4 and 7. I mean, I've been advocating for a few months now, and you were teaching me things, just reading the drafts. So learn, I say, right?
I'm gonna go back to our committee on Zoom and here in the room. Any more questions for Al? Before I go to attendees if they have questions?
Like a
Oh, go
quick
ahead.
question, not like directly related to the work you're doing, but I'm really interested in what you're saying, like only 27% of public schools have students with like publications, like most of these programs, study classes aren't teaching local issues. Is there any adjacent programming? You mentioned a couple organizations, Generation Global Kids.
Mhm.
But is there a broader push like in the public schools to make that more robust?
Right, yeah, I'm not,
Right, like
as,
that feels like such a, and
Yeah.
again,
Conversations about
not
that.
a,
yeah, I'll get you,
nothing I'll grill you on, but.
right.
I'm just
What I could do is I could
curious.
forward the information to you and you could share it with her.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
there's.
seems like such a loss.
There's like a couple of people in the CUNY School of Professional Studies that have a little initiative
Cool,
helping
okay.
schools develop student-led newspapers.
Cool.
And, again, there's always this conversation. So one of my favorite parts of the bill, even though it doesn't flesh it out that much, is this mandatory civic
Right.
education. But that also has to come with funding, does it not?
Yes,
So is that a different resolution or maybe we need?
No,
to
that's
get our
where-
funding
yeah,
in here?
We add,
yeah, once the legislation passes, then there's additional work of budget work. And I'll give you an example that doesn't directly affect me, but affects me because I have students I work with who are females. So there's legislation that passed in Albany a few years ago to provide sanitary products to all girls in the high schools. But they didn't give it the funding.
Yes.
Hello?
yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. That'd be like approving mathematics and giving no textbooks.
We have a message or comment from Anne.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just wanted to say, I mean, the Department of Education has something called Civics for All. So they have a program that's actually quite a good civics program that's been created, but it's optional. And so very few schools know about it or participate in it. And having had kids who have gone through it, I've seen how phenomenal it is. They pick issues that matter to them. They do soapbox speeches, they do research, they find out ways that they can influence policy. It's stuff that I think some schools are doing, but it really does need to be mandated for every school, or
Yes.
overwhelmed teachers, staff, administrators aren't going to opt into something additional. That is the additional thing, though. That's the hard thing, is you have to make sure that they're prioritizing this, and sometimes it's giving up something else, but civics seems like a pretty high priority.
Right, so that's why I think like, partnering with organizations that do civics training, like Generation Citizen and Global Kids and Why Vote New York, they have a whole syllabus like developed. And what they found is, they go into social studies classrooms and they actually do a training with the social studies teachers. And then they give them support along the way. And then at the end of every semester, the classrooms give a presentation on whatever issue they decided is their issue. And again, it could be anything from improving the school menu to citywide issues of improving relationships with the police.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Rich, did you have a question?
No. I just reading through it again. The proposal is to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in state and local elections, but obviously this wouldn't, they'd be able to vote in state and local, but not in national, right?
Not national, no.
Okay.
And it's specifically in support of existing state legislation. So the resolution should, enumerate those pieces of legislation.
Yes.
And there are also pending resolutions of support in the city council.
Yeah.
So for the bills that support changing the state constitution, Sean Abreu has a pending resolution for that. And then for the legislation that would say lower the voting age to 16 and mandate 8 hours of civic education, Gail Brewer is the council person that's sponsoring that resolution.
Do you know that in 1971, when Congress changed the voting age from 21 to 18, had any states done that before the federal government made the change?
Not to my knowledge, but I could be wrong.
No, not to my knowledge. I know that it was it got kind of sticky in 71
Mhm.
because somebody came along, I can't remember who, and said, well, because Congress did it initially, right?
Right,
And they said, Congress has overstepped, they can't do this, it's a state issue.
right.
But then all the states came in and were like, we're good, and it was fine. So I guess to that, that question did come up, states rights,
Right.
dare I say it. But the states were all in favor
Now,
at that time.
yeah, I will say that constitutional amendment passed in the shortest period of time of any amendment in US history. I mean, it
Yeah.
was resistant to begin with,
Yeah, it
but
sounds
people decided,
great.
yeah, it was.
Sounds great. It's just that this proposal is to do it the opposite way.
Well, it's not a federal,
Right. So this is,
only state and city. So that's why
Right.
what we're asked to do is to change the state constitution.
right,
We're asking the city just to give a resolution of support. Because they can't,
right. But is the goal then to have Congress consider doing this as a federal law so that they can take part in national elections?
yeah, there hasn't been much move at the federal level. The first person that supported lowering the voting age to 18 at the federal level was actually Nancy Pelosi. She, she expressed support for that in
Yeah.
2018. And Grace Meng, who's a congresswoman from Flushing, Queens, she introduced an amendment to the For the People Act when that was passed. So.
Yeah. Okay, but
The
yeah, I guess
Democrats-
maybe I'm missing, maybe I'm not communicating well. In
Okay.
1971, the law was changed at the federal level,
Right,
and then the states followed.
right. This is the opposite. You're
This is the
correct.
opposite. Okay, and why,
Based-
and the rationale there is because we think this is really important, but we don't think the federal government's gonna do it, so we're gonna do it for our state.
Well, that and also what's been shown in other places in the United States and Europe and South America is that voting on a local level it introduces people to the voting process and exploring issues of things that are directly affecting their lives.
Yeah.
And then they could get more theoretical, with the federal stuff.
Okay,
And I'd like to add that, our last local election, we had what I put in the resolution, over 80% registration and like 7% voter turnout.
Yeah. Not good.
That is not representative at all. And we know from all of the other states, localities and countries that have done this around the world, that it increases engagement, not just for the kids, but for entire communities.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think anybody can argue that higher voter turnout is better.
yeah, except for the case where the younger people are manipulated by voting how the adults who take care of them tell them to vote.
That is.
If only my listen to it.
Yeah, And it's been shown to be the case in some cases,
Yeah,
but not in the majority. I mean, again, there've been studies been done in Europe and also the 7 cities in the United States. And young voters have not been following in their parents' footsteps necessarily. They've been making their own decisions.
yeah,
Young people are, for a lot of different reasons, I don't have the time to go into it, a lot more independent minded today than they've ever been before.
yeah. And that's a good thing, you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's good to be independent. They also have to be informed.
Yeah,
is-
that's what I'm concerned about, the informed part. The foundation of democracy is an informed public, and I'm not sure that 16-year-olds are that informed.
It's a foundation, but it's not a qualification. Qualification is you must be 18 years of age and
Yeah.
you must be a resident of your state.
Understand?
That's the qualification to vote.
Yeah,
There's no education involved. Even though I think there should be education for
Yeah.
everyone, it's not a qualification.
yeah. Okay, and it just seems that suffrage laws, I'm not sure this is the way to pass them. I mean, I don't know. All right.
Rich, in whereas 17, I don't know if you have it in front of you.
Have it right in front of me, yeah.
Yeah, whereas 17, we talked about across the globe, 16 and 17-year-olds have demonstrated readiness for civic engagements through advocacy around gun safety, world hunger, human rights, and climate crisis. We've seen that in, we've seen that in our news daily within the last few years. The
Mhm.
teens have come up and are forcing the adults, like, this is our world that you're leaving us, and they're more engaged.
I mean, yeah, they have to, these kids today, they are really, really aware of what's going on, not just around the globe with these big issues, but the simple issues right there in their communities, transportation, they have to get to school every day. Bicycle safety, some of them ride bicycles. I mean, these are hyper-local issues that these kids, it affects their everyday lives. And why shouldn't they have a voice? They certainly have opinion. And they are able to do research. I mean, internet, sometimes it's not a great thing, but sometimes it's an awesome thing for kids because they're able to do deep dives and get information that otherwise they wouldn't have access to. And it really helps them be informed. And also I was reading some study that said that they do more research. The kids, when they're able to vote, actually do more research on the issues. I don't know if it's because they're school age and that's how
It's a
they
study.
operate
Yeah.
all the time. To actually research and get the information to make an informed decision, because unlike us, they're still in school and their brains haven't died from old age.
Then the issue about gun safety, school shooting, that's like the
affects
top
them
of their
directly.
affects them directly.
Yeah, what I was mentioning earlier is, this is the first generation that have had to do shelter-in drills as a matter of habit, because any maniac at any period of time could walk into the school and start shooting the place up. And it's also the first generation where 90% of scientists are telling us that the planet is not going to survive the way we know it survives today, because we're simply not doing enough. And if we don't step up and get things done, who's going to inherit that situation? The young people today are going to inherit the mess that people like me created, because we refuse to take responsibility, for the climate.
You know, 18-year-olds, 18 to 29 is the lowest turnout rate.
Yeah, I would like you to tell me what the
Okay, so
rates are.
I only have the information that I've seen on comparing 16 and 17-year-old first-time voters with 18, 19 to 20-year-old first-time voters. And in cities in the United States and in Europe, 16 and 17-year-olds come out at 4 times the rate as the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds in the initial election. It doesn't hold, over the course of 8 or 10 years, but they still come out at twice the rate.
After the initial election.
right,
Right, yeah.
subsequent elections, which means they're establishing a habit of voting. This is what we're trying to build. Yeah, because even at the federal level, I mean, we brag about 65%. Other countries, at the federal level, voting 80, 85, 90%.
Yeah,
So-
it was 51.4% in 2020. Let me pull up. Yeah, I mean,
What was 51?
the 18 to 24 voter turnout,
So 51% of the registered.
registered 18 to 24-year-olds.
The big increase in 2020.
I mean, it was under, I'm not sure where you're looking at. You're looking at the state or are you looking at US?
I'm looking at US. Do you want state?
Yeah, I'm looking at US and I'm seeing, 20% turnout in 2014.
So 20% of what? I mean, this is a really important difference because a lot of the 20-year-olds are not registered.
I'm looking at share of voter population, what it says, which implies to me that it's everybody that could
Could
vote
vote, but doesn't.
independent of registration. It's a good question, but this. And first, I don't know if we're looking at the same thing, I'm looking at something from Kaiser. It suggests,
Looking at the Brookings Met.
yeah,
Census says.
this
Voter
suggests
turnout
like
is highest
20.
among those ages 65 to 74 at 76%.
Except of the registered voters or of the people that age?
Eligible to vote.
Is the question.
I'm looking right now.
Gotta be. So,
Different thing. Because once you are registered,
No, I
Yeah.
know, but well, it says that stat for the one that's in the resolution. For our last city council race. Let me pull up everything.
really,
The census says.
All right, you wanna look that up? I was
Yeah.
gonna go back, and you had your hand raised. Do you have a follow-up?
I wanted to ask, I wanted to ask a question about what Rich was saying he thought this might not be the right way to go about it, starting at sort of the local level. My intuition would be the opposite, that going at a local level first, where things are more concrete, like my kids know that the mayor cut the budget to their schools. They know that their school food changed because they didn't want to pay for the food that too many kids were eating. My kids know that our city councilman shows up at things. He's on our corner, doing participatory budgeting. He's involved in the school and shows up at events. Those kinds of local things that impact them directly seem like they make much more concrete sense than voting for a president, where I feel like, or Congress, where you're looking at these sort of abstract ideas that I think may be too hard for them to initially start with. I think of this as sort of a way of educating kids on civics as they're younger and they're less jaded, which I think is also a part of the maybe a lower turnout at like 18. That tends to be an age where there's a lot of eye rolling and a lot less interest. Like I was saying about going with participatory budgeting, the 20 somethings would walk straight by, but the 15-year-olds, 14-year-olds were running over and like sitting there and reading through the things and asking me questions and really engaging with it. I think maybe catching them before that level of jadedness and on a more local level maybe makes more sense than coming top down. Anyway, that was what I wanted to say.
great.
Thanks, Ann.
But this is not, to clarify, this is not directly tied to a federal voting movement. This is for
This is
local, like,
local, yeah.
state elections right now, and like, that might be aligned with the federal.
But
This is local, city and state, and that's it.
Constitution requires states to say.
Yes, no, I understand, but this is tied to a broader movement, is what
Talking
I,
about what I'm
Clarify.
proposing is only for city and state elected.
yeah.
But that's what I'm telling you, we cannot.
You can't.
Right, but there could be a broader national movement, and this
Yeah.
is not connected to a broader national movement. This is not tied to broader advocacy. This is focused on
Yeah,
local and
that would
state.
be lovely.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. Nor should we even try.
So what I did do is I printed out this sheet for you because I felt bad when I emailed you this afternoon. So that's kind of like a one pager that shows all the support people so far.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'll pass it around to my community members. Rich, you have a follow-up? Your hand's raised.
Yeah, I just, it's exactly the point that Ann made. that bothers me is, you have a kid's school lunch gets cut and they want to go vote about that. I think that's exactly the sort of reaction that I'd rather, that I don't think, that concerns me. Because when cuts are made by elected officials, they're taking a broader scope into account. They're taking into account all the requests for spending. And they're making choices based on what they feel is best for all the constituents. I'm not sure that a 16-year-old has an understanding of that. I'm not sure that most people have an understanding of that, but the reactionary vote to something like that and the ability to be mobilized at 16 to go support that without understanding what else gets cut or the ramifications of that, it's exactly what I'm concerned about. Just don't think they're informed. I don't think they have the enough experience to even ask the question. I mean, we talk about college grads, the voting of college graduates versus non-college graduates. These are high school kids.
I mean, I won't speak for your kids. I can speak for mine. My kid is 13 and ready now and informed now and much better informed than many, many adults I know. Additionally, you know, school lunch budget gets cut. That's a meal that many families in this city rely on. That's the only food they get. And if I were a kid in high school and I knew that my friend now wasn't going to eat, or that the quality of the one meal that they're getting at school every day, you know what? That's broken windows to me. It is an indicator if somebody cut food for children that need it. And why wouldn't I or a child then say, you know what? Maybe I need to vote differently. Maybe I need to vote for somebody who has more in common with my values and the things that I think are important. Because you know what? The electeds find a way when they think something is important. And I would argue that maybe not all of them are really thinking about all their constituents. Every one of them is not. So why is it a bad thing to allow capable 16 and 17-year-olds, 16 and 17-year-olds capable of making that kind of observation?
Yeah.
I mean,
because the law here is not allowing capable ones to vote. It's allowing all of them to vote. And there is no litmus test for who's 16 and is, by your definition, capable. The answer is,
capable.
I mean, if
I'm just saying at age 16, they're not.
I mean, people who shouldn't be voting. Capable. So, you know, the kids are not.
Mara, the question is, and I think it's a valid question, although I'm with you on that. Yeah. The valid question is, at what age does capability come? And I think it may be age 25. I mean, you know, I don't know when, but it's certainly, it's a real issue of how capable somebody is. And 16-year-olds are not as developed as 25-year-olds. That's true.
I actually might argue that.
Well, I-
16-year-old me had a lot more ideas. 25-year-old me had different concerns.
Okay.
16-year-old.
But in terms of capable, being able to analyze long-term, short-term waiver options, I mean, there's no, absolutely, a lot of 16-year-olds smoke cigarettes. You know, but I mean, they haven't weighed the long-term stuff.
But so do a lot of 50-year-olds.
Yes, I know, but the point is,
And they have.
there is a developmental maturation that happens from 16 to 25.
Okay, there's also,
Right, that does now, the question is, in terms of getting people to have habits that are good habits, then it does make sense to let them start voting so they develop a voting habit. But to develop the idea of analyzing stuff takes a while.
They analyze stuff all day, every day.
What?
16-year-olds.
What about, would you say?
They analyze things all day long.
Yes, and they don't do it quite.
Well, I mean, neither do many adults.
That's true.
That's not even, to me, that is not a valid argument because
Well,
there are so many
maturation,
adults
you know,
who are not mature.
Right, that is it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's a developmental question, which you're not able to. Which
Right.
Rich is trying to bring up.
Okay, it's 7:33. We can bring this to business session. And I'm mindful of your time. I don't want to keep people longer than they have to be
Right.
here. Attendees, I'm going out for last calls on questions. Anyone? Nobody's raised their hand. Okay. All right, then I'm going to thank our presenter unless you have
Okay.
something else you want to add.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for being here and lively conversation and ideas, and I may be getting ready to retire from this campaign soon because you have people like this.
Not me.
All right, well, thank you. Al, for
Okay.
coming and presenting.
All right. Now, in terms of finding out what the decision of the committee,
We'll
send me an
you-
email. Yeah, okay, that's great.
Gonna talk in business session about the resolution that we sent you,
Right,
and vote on it. And then bring it to full board this Thursday. And,
it's just Thursday, that fast, okay,
and we'll let you know,
how it goes.
or immediately, what the.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank you.
alrighty. It's been,
Thank you.
Thanks.
thank you, everybody.
With that, we're entering business session. Attendees can stay and listen, but you are not able to ask questions. And now we're in session, Mark, you want me to
Share the resolution.
share the resolution?
I mean, has everybody read it? Did you all get the link? I put it in a while ago.
Yeah.
Can everybody see the resolution? All right.
I didn't get it,
But we
but I
can
mean,
share
I
it.
will now get it.
No, you can share it on the screen. if that-
Or I can print it for you right now. You want me to do that?
That would be, good, but I've got my computer,
Oh,
Oh, all
so
right,
I could.
then let's go paperless.
okay, all right. You want me to share my screen?
No, everybody's on.
Oh,
And everybody has it.
okay. So. Do we want to? Do you have any questions on the resolution? Anyone or comment? And I
Yeah.
thank Mark for,
Yeah, get it.
Yes, I think.
let me look. Oh, wait, it came from Mark.
Thank you. Good night. Thanks.
But I mean, you got it.
Yeah, I won't see it.
Let me. Should I-
You know what, let me forward it to you, and then it'll be at the
That's a
top.
good idea,
and then it'll be at the.
right? But, you know, get too many emails, as you see.
Yeah, does anybody have, is everybody reading, even though we sent it out 2 days ago?
No, I think the thing that I might like to clarify is just the high turnout among the group. I think the comparison point that like. What is compelling to me about this is that 16 and 17-year-olds actually do turn out higher rate than 18
Yeah.
to 24-year-olds, which don't, like, they turn out lightly. And I think that that is what, I think that's a helpful.
Yeah, although.
Factor that like, hey, you formed a habit if you picked these 16 to 17-year-olds. Even if it only continues at twice the rate, that's still actually kind of a remarkable increase. So I'd love if we could capture the rate that 18 to 24-year-olds vote, which what I'm seeing, it's like 24.
No, it was in the other one. We
Like in
have,
New
we
York,
have that
kind of
data
where.
from the census, but what I will say is that perhaps the reason, right, what we've seen in all these other countries is that when 16 and 17-year-olds are given the right to vote, they have the right to vote, they take it seriously. And not only do they turn out, but then they become lifelong voters.
Right.
And so
There's like a.
they're
causality. Yeah.
18, 19 to 24 voting turnout is higher
Is
than
influenced, right, right,
ours.
right.
Because 18-year-olds, again, like 18 to 24-year-old,
I think there are like lots of structural issues, right? Folks are away at school, absentee voting is different, right? Like, there are reasons why the 18 to 24 voting group, they are transient in cities, they're transient in states, right? Like, they are maybe not as able to participate. But I do think the participation from that group is potentially like undermining to giving younger people, so to express that 16 to 17-year-old vote more than that squidgy.
Yeah, although
I think it's helpful.
I would like to see the research.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm taking what Al said.
I mean,
What's the matter?
I mean, what the matter is that people aren't taking seriously the very argument, which is that maturation takes over. And then the evidence of the 18, in your thing is if the 16 to 17-year-old are wiser and better than the 18, 19-year-old. I don't believe it's true. Now, if in fact the voting rate is affected by the fact that they are so it theoretically possible, but I'm not convinced that it's true. And I would like to see our research rather than advocate.
New York. What's the other?
Maryland is a state where it's happened in most 6 places. Would like to see their data and make sure it's not just.
Well, it's 6 localities and they're quite small. But we can look at that.
But that's the kind of data that is real, especially.
Yeah.
When over the years, I mean, I can imagine when it's first introduced, everybody says, oh, now that you can vote, we can. But whether 5 years, it's still a higher rate than for 17, 18, 19.
Well,
I think Al will be able to provide the data that he cited. I think that's a really good point. Yeah.
but he's presenting advocacy stuff. But what Keen is asking for is what the other states have done, right?
Oh, I thought his numbers were from the other states. Like the 4% or the 4. I might have made that, I might have made that up. Okay.
But we have to vote on this because full board is Thursday and tomorrow is exact. So we have to make a decision before.
I mean, I don't think, for me, I don't need that data. I've been reading data, international data all day. I'm not concerned with 18 and 24-year-olds in this conversation. And the reason for that is because 16-year-olds become 18 to 24-year-olds who will vote more than the 18 to 24-year-olds. No, but it's true. And there is data that has proven that from around the world, particularly in Europe.
Well, then if you've been reading it, you need to email.
I will.
Because that's the kind of
Then you have to see.
because there's a lot of controversy about
And voting gets
whether
more-
16-year-olds are as capable as older people.
All right, so 18 to 24-year-olds represent 10% of New York State's 11.5 million enrolled voters. 26% of registrants are 25 to 34. People 35 or older comprise only 30% of new voter registration. 18, registrants turning 18, newly entering the state or otherwise registering for the first time. 3 months preceding the 2016 primary election day cutoff. Almost half of the registrations were 18 to 24-year-olds. But it doesn't tell us yet how they voted. Let's see if they voted after registering. 40% people registered to vote. It increased our voter registration a lot, but that was 2016, which was a big election. But a lot of people actually missed the cutoff to even vote in that election, those 18 years. That's another thing that we have, you know, we've been hearing a lot about moving the elections to years, which also increases voter participation.
That we need to change. to increase it.
And when I was going through this data today and all of these studies and white papers and articles and history, that was one of the factors also that affected youth voting. Those off-year elections. But none of us really, I mean, we do, but people statistically don't vote on those off year elections.
Right.
And so that's, you know. Overall.
There are very good reasons to do it. And you know, there's a whole question of what age can you have an abortion with your parents' consent? What age can you be tried as an adult if you commit a crime? What age?
That's all in the
can you get it
resolution.
tried?
It's all in the resolution. What 16-year-olds can do, 16-year-olds can be emancipated, can pay their own rent.
They
Can,
can be.
they absolutely can, and work and earn a paycheck and pay taxes. And are in charge of their own health care and can acquire health care and make their own decisions and not have to tell their parents whether they're emancipated or not. I don't know if you have girls, but the second my daughter turned 12, I was cut out of a lot of her medical stuff that she had to grant me access to. Kids have rights.
But in order to be emancipated, they have to go through a whole legal thing to say that. They can't just say, I'm emancipated.
Actually, there is no legal process in New York State for emancipation. It usually happens as part of another court case, technically. So if a kid goes and says, I'm no longer living under my parents' roof, I am, you know, self-sufficient, here's what I'm doing, the court might just sever the parents' rights over the kid. Is the way it happens. I mean,
It's complicated. I mean, first of all,
it's complicated, but it does.
no, but we're not talking about, I mean, the point really that I'm trying to make is that the society and the family structure, all of the maturation processes are okay. And that 16-year-olds are not the same. From many scores. Now, whether that's, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't, I mean, I think it has to be looked at issue by issue. And if in fact, giving them the right to vote will increase brushing your teeth. Without the word. I mean, if it will increase their awareness of kinds of, which is what he's arguing, that would be great. It will increase their awareness of the relationship between local government, school menus. But well, I'm sure, I'm not convinced, but.
So 18 to 24-year-olds for the 2022 election is 20.7% turnout of registered 18 to 24-year-olds, according to Tufts.
So the argument is that if we lower the voter age, that number
Will increase. I mean, I believe that to be true, and that is what I think we've learned from other places that has happened. So there are, yeah. I'm just sharing data with everybody. I had something up about, I had a list of countries that have done this. and localities, US localities. But everything is also on the vote 16.
In the Chinese. Any more questions from the committee on the red zone? Because we'll take a, go ahead, Rich.
I think points 4, 5, 6, and 7 are sort of weak in it. Yeah, yes. Well, first of all, I don't believe that 16, 17-year-olds bear many of the same responsibilities. Some may, many do not. Yes, 16, 17 can work, pay taxes, etc. Some can. No one can collect unemployment until they're 18 and they've worked 18 months. Again, they can.
Are you?
16 and 17-year-olds can be charged as an adult. Yeah, so can 13-year-olds, but most don't.
He's looking at where.
Oh, 4, 5, 6, I thought he said 16.
Oh, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think just because, I mean, they can work, they can be charged as adults. I think these are not necessarily arguments that support the majority of the 16 or 17-year-olds to be I don't think it supports the cause of 16 and 17-year-olds. The fact that they could be charged for as adults of a crime, well, most times you have to be 18. If the crime's really terrible, yes, you can be. But by the way, a 13-year-old can be charged as an adult too if the crime is really terrible.
Right, that's not an argument. I don't think that's an argument. I don't think the argument should be that if they can be charged with a crime, they should be able to vote. I think the argument should be that if we start voting earlier, we increase civic participation. That's the reason. And I don't think other stuff is.
So that language was taken directly out of the city council bill. I'm okay getting rid of 4, but 5 and 6 are true and valid, and it speaks to the same reason that the voting age was reduced in 1971, which is if a kid can get arrested and be tried as an adult, they should be able to vote. Like, if you're gonna put that kind of responsibility on a 16,
Well, I don't think they should be part as an adult.
right, but they are.
But that doesn't mean that it's a good thing.
It's
That's
nobody
not an argument in
If somebody,
favor.
does this read like it's a good thing?
No, it doesn't, but I hear this,
So-
like,
so-
we should be like, the broader idea is we should be advocating that kids aren't tried as adults. Not that, like, the causality, I agree that the causality is not,
Argument
so,
in favor
yeah.
of voting, in my opinion.
I think I am compelled by the, like, paying taxes principle, I think that does
I
happen.
just looked at it.
Oh, you just believe it?
Do you feel
But I
like?
think 4, I also agree, like, we don't want kids to be bearing the same responsibilities as adults. This is not in support of kids bearing those responsibilities,
Right.
but I agree that it feels a little bit separate from the, like, causality around.
So why don't we?
Like, let
change the
these smart
language
kids start
to
a habit.
say- Should we say these kids are capable, or should we say some, or should we say that while they shouldn't, they can be suspected of a crime? I mean,
I don't know, I don't think we need, I mean, I personally prefer shorter resolutions. I think it's. I think this is extraneous. And the main, you know.
So take it out.
I'm okay with it.
Is
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
16-year-olds can be civically engaged and cared deeply
I'm gonna
about
send
local
you the study
issues.
right now.
Therefore, they should be able to vote.
Does she have it up? There's a whole study and,
You just emailed her?
no, it's in the resolution. Nobody read the resolution. We sent it to you exactly for this reason.
I think I got it
It's the
yesterday.
one
You wanna
from
see my email?
which Brooklyn law? It's Brooklyn law, William and Mary link. With that whole article that was done by that proposal.
But you know, I spend all my time looking
know
at
how busy you
articles
are.
that are contradictory of other articles. And the job is to winnow it down and say, okay, what's really true. So the fact that there is an article does not, unless
Yes,
there's data.
but it laid out a very good case, and I also read everything against, going back years. And the against arguments were all the same, and they were only 2 points. And they were not good points,
Okay.
and they were all from a certain.
The problem with what I'm saying is. You know, so I think she did look at all.
Yeah, she did, and she wrote.
But
Yes, tomorrow for writing it.
I'm doing a revised, but also, if we're gonna try to get this whole board, I think we should make it very clear and not have other stuff.
All right, we took out,
We took- They're gone.
Rich, we took them out. Is there another one that's bothering?
Well,
Or
it did-
flush
I mean,
out?
just for number 6, again, do we take 6 out? Because if we go down the case there, 15-year-olds can be charged as adults, 13-year-olds can be charged as adults.
Is he looking at?
Number 6.
Whereas number six,
Now says, without the right to vote, 16-year-olds cannot participate in the fundamental democratic process of
No,
conduct.
mine says that I.
We might just have to.
Can you talk about those?
They-
I'm looking at this.
You're looking at the one I emailed, not the one that's in the link, in the chat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so you've taken it out. So what was 9 is now, yeah, all right, hold on. Yeah, let me get it.
Putting it back in the chat.
I'll go to oh, she's not in chat. I went to the email. All right,
Because we moved it. Right.
Yeah.
It was. See,
All right.
what he's looking at, what I'm
I
looking
got
at,
it now. Yeah,
which is what Patricia gave me.
hold on.
I'll share the screen.
I'll share. She's gonna share it and we'll look at
I
it.
got it, I can see it now. Yeah.
No, but Keen doesn't have that version.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, fine, sure.
All right, Keen is up there on the screen now. Cause this one is an older version
Okay,
and we're actually making edits in real time in the shared document.
okay, so how do I get that up?
Yes.
It says, please try to keep that version.
Share it with her and then-
You want to get, how do I get?
All right.
There you go, Ken.
All right.
Did she just send it?
Yeah. Wait for it to refresh.
I'm sorry, I've been delving into studies that were done on the impact of lowering the voting age, and I read into one that was the NIH.
So we're all looking at it real time.
Okay,
And there's one at University of Edinburgh, and it does seem like there's an increase over time of voter turnout with introducing the voting age starting at 16.
Yeah, I think that's yeah.
So we should put a whereas that says that.
I think there is.
What's the recommendation?
The Edinburgh study, I have it, I can plug it in there.
Yeah, I mean, like, cause this is like, it gauged it from starting in 2014 to 2021. And there continued to be higher turnout. And the one done by the NIH analyzes whether voters in the age range of 16 to 18 is any less informed. And it seemed like they found that no, they were not any less informed than the 18 to 24-year-olds. I don't know whether it compares to other places and education groups, but it does. I mean, those are like fairly large studies done of, not insignificant numbers of voters. And that was in Australia that they were analyzing it because it was the place that they had the longest record.
But
Share. It was Australia?
Australia, I think so. Let me see the NIH one. It's
like, come on, I mean, Australia, it's, they have the day off to vote. Everybody is given the day off and it's a requirement that everybody vote. So I don't think it's a pertinent example.
But it's not just, that's not the voter turnout one. That's the on the voter, how informed they were. The Australia one is on how informed they are. The Edinburgh one is on turnout.
Yeah, we can add that information.
And do you want to add that?
Sure. I mean, hold on one second. Let me,
On number 14, meanwhile, I think the word from should be included
On whereas 14?
on whereas for
From, oh, from. They care about, oh, take it out?
and put including instead.
Do you see that in live that she did it?
Yes, I
Okay.
see.
So we're all in the same document.
Well, it's-
Any other edits from anybody?
Darlene is saying with the studies, Scotland and.
And can you pop them in the chat?
yeah, I'm trying to, I looked them up on my phone, so I'm sending them to myself and then putting them.
I'm gonna pop it in, not on my other computer. Please put them in history though. Because I'm seeing the screen, it keeps getting small. Yeah, and you do it, I can't.
Well, you can stop
No.
sharing because he has it up. That's why we're doing it for her permit. You can stop.
number 17, instead of found high turnout among higher, isn't it? Because high,
Higher than what though? It's
well,
not, it's
but
not
high is even more weird.
high proportionately. High.
Higher turnout among this age group than
Clarify.
older.
We're gonna clarify that,
We're gonna clarify.
or take it out.
But you can't just say high turnout because,
We can't just say higher because higher than what?
yeah, but you can't just, exactly.
So what we need
Okay,
to,
higher turnout among.
what we need to do is say the actual percentage,
That, we had.
a turnout, well, we're gonna put the
Okay,
information
but-
from these
but
studies and be very
What it
specific.
says now
Too big.
is too big.
All right.
Any other notes?
Any other notes? Comments?
I think if Al could share his source for the 4 times, I think that would exactly fill.
It's in
That won't-
vote 16, I
I
should
can't
have
find it. The vote
Google
16
vote
for the,
16.
no, I'm there. I can't find the
Their
4 times
website's
higher.
probably-
Okay, I'll keep searching, but I think the 4 times higher than 18 to 24 is.
You're saying put that in as a whereas?
No, I think that would just be helpful support for Keen's point, like higher than. Like 4 times higher than, if what Al's saying is correct.
Yes. Lowering the voting age boosts long-term participation in elections. This is the University of Edinburgh study. How young people in Scotland experience the right to vote. Vote at 16 practice, here's all the research. And here's what we learned. We're gonna pop these in here. So this is a study of Scotland lowering the voting age to 16 in 2014. Study was completed in 2021. Researchers say the move has had a positive long-term consequence for turnout. The boost is unrelated to whether people cast their vote as a 16 or 17-year-old in the independence referendum or in later elections. However, It had no long-term effects on non-electoral forms of political engagement, such as involvement in demonstrations and petitions on addressing socioeconomic inequalities and political engagement, which would go to the concern that kids are voting like their parents. They won't. And this is a different generation.
Right. Again, I think number 4,
Whereas
whereas 4. People will start to argue, but I don't know why it is. I think they should live with their parents and not be emancipated, but they should still.
But that's not for us to say.
But I don't know, I don't think the argument that they can be emancipated is an argument why they should be. Those are 2 separate things.
You know, old enough to fight, old enough to vote. It's the same argument that carried so much weight that it was the fastest
So you're doing it because.
amendment.
I don't think,
For me, if we are going to burden 16-year-olds with these kinds of responsibilities, the way that adults are burdened with these kinds of responsibilities, then they should have the right.
well, I don't think we should burden them with responsibilities. So I don't think we should.
Yes, we shouldn't, but that's not the resolution we're writing.
But then
That's a
why
different
raise that flag in this resolution?
For me, it's very relevant. For me personally, I'm not gonna die on this mountain. If you feel like it takes away from the resolution, fine, but that is not
I
the
do.
conversation we're having. Whether it's right that kids are emancipated,
But I mean, I think this was,
it's a whole different conversation. Maybe
biggest
there's
argument
maybe
is getting them in the habit of caring about. That's the argument. And
so
whether,
that's the biggest takeaway from
and that is,
Scottish study.
Right.
Lasting impact, the only actually real lasting impact found was for good civic education. Those who had taken the classes in school where political issues had been discussed voted in greater numbers even as they grew older.
right,
And that's what we want.
right, exactly, that, go ahead.
So,
he wants number 4 gone. We want to keep it,
yeah, I don't,
so take it out.
we're
And then-
supporting legislation that actually has all that stuff in it, so.
So
Right,
but
but
just take it out, you don't like this.
We don't
Take-
need it.
We can take it.
I don't wanna run away from the reality of what we do to children when we treat them like adults. And then say they're not adults, I think that's messed up, but if
Right.
it's, you know, a deal breaker for Keen, let's take it out. I don't think it's fair to the kids, but if it's a deal breaker for you.
All right, we'll take it out, because the other legislation have, the
It's
ones
all
that
in
we're
it.
supporting has that language. in it.
I understand.
Okay.
That they did, right.
So you know, Mark,
Wait, did
no, whereas 4, she doesn't like that, but
Oh, that she doesn't like it because she doesn't like kids to be emancipated. Not that we're saying it. I think that that's
We're saying red flag, red flag. I mean, it's like, why bring that up? Why not just focus on the issue?
we feel like it would be
it's
divisive.
taken away,
I
it's
think
taken away from the
we
meeting.
can, rather than spread.
Oh,
It's gone,
it's gone. I took it out.
it's gone, it's gone. So going forward, is everybody okay with voting now, or is there another concern? And, no, and you're good to vote, and you're ready to vote, Rick?
Yeah,
You're ready to vote?
Yeah.
Ed, you're ready to vote on the resolution as is? With, and therefore be resolved, committee board 2 calls on New York State Legislature to pass and New York State voters to approve S-2562 and Assembly 330, which would amend the state constitution, to lower the voting age for state and local elections to 16. That's the therefore be resolved, short
Yeah,
and
that's
sweet.
the part, that's very short and sweet, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Hard work this brother.
I'm putting the Scottish study information in, we'll pull a captivating.
So
From there,
I'm going to ask my committee, all in favor of this resolution, say aye.
I,
Those that are nays,
I'm an A. I
you're a
can't.
nay? Okay. All right, so it's. How many are,
And
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yays. Okay.
Rich, if you were just gonna vote no, no matter what, why did you make us take the whereas down? Like, if you were no, why?
I just don't, like it. Well, I thought it weakened your argument. I don't like this. I just don't think the process should be, I haven't been convinced in this discussion that that suffrage laws should be decided by a committee and a community board. I mean, this just seems crazy to me, and,
Nothing is decided by a community board. All we do is give our
I'm
opinion.
aware of that. I've been on the community board a long time. I'm aware of that.
Legislation. There
So
are three
my-
different pieces of legislation in the state and city to support. So we're talking about actually supporting legislation that is already being worked on by our elected officials.
I'm aware.
So the community board doesn't make decisions, we're advisory.
Yeah, I've been on the community board a long time. I understand that.
I know, you just said, I don't think community board should be deciding. We don't decide anything. We would like to, but we don't.
And Rich, I don't know, we do, they said, they can have a community board member as young as 16.
Yeah, should 16-year-old community board members not be able to vote, Rich?
Yeah, it's 16-year-old people be drafted. When the law was passed in 71, it was because people were being
All right, I don't
drafted.
think we're gonna get into.
Or are they?
No,
I mean,
I'm not.
should
I'm
they
just gonna vote no.
All right. And the no.
did anybody get a chance to look at the NIH one?
Yeah, I mean, I saw it today.
I think I'm looking at that one now. It's Austria.
It's Austria, not Australia. No, I realized that. I looked back at it. It's Austria.
It's
I was
Austria.
like, whoops.
I think, like, what it's saying here is that like 16 to 17-year-olds in Vienna were estimated to have voted at 64% turnout, substantially higher than the turnout of 18 to 20-year-olds, which is 56%. That is like slightly higher. I would love to see owls like 4 times.
What's that?
No, that's not the one I'm looking at. Is that the one I posted? Because what I posted was a thing that was about the one from the NIH. It was about how well informed the voters were at 16 to 18. It was evaluating the criticisms of.
Okay, this one is linked on the one I'm reading. It's called "Are People More Inclined to Vote at 16 Than at 18?" Evidence.
That's not the one.
Voting.
That's not the one I
This is-
posted.
Yeah. Okay, this is in NIH or cited in NIH. It was linked on the.
In the chat?
No, I'm not in Zoom. It was linked in the.
Oh, okay. I posted something in the chat that was evaluating like about criticisms of. It was a bunch of studies it was a study that evaluated a lot of data on the criticisms of voting under 18, 16 to 18-year-olds.
From the perspective of judgment or from like a habit forming perspective?
It was talking about that's the one you were looking at?
Oh, no, I'm clarifying which one.
The
What
one that,
what the evidence, yeah.
here, let me, do you see the one I posted in the chat? That's the NCBI. It's the second link I posted.
You find it?
Erin, you want me to just send it to you? It's so.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm confused,
Is
but.
National Library had its own.
Oh, no,
No?
no,
All right.
yeah, wait, no, that's
Yeah.
good, voting at 16, I'll turn on equality, thank you.
Is this stuff that we're putting into the resolution that we're still discussing, because we just voted?
It's just those two pieces that Emma and Ann brought up, I think should go in there.
as a
Because it's
footnote?
supporting information with footnotes to both studies. So one says, it talks about how informed 16-year-olds are, and the second one talks about voter turnout and engagement rates going forward.
So that's two whereas. We're adding?
I think.
I mean, I
just
think-
Citations to the existing whereas, I don't,
Yeah.
I think I would attach it to,
That's all. Just
Okay.
supporting information.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, there is also on the study that talks about how kids are informed and in fact more informed than their older voter counterparts. There was a really juicy quote from this afternoon. It got so long, I didn't want to put it in there. But it may be one more, whereas everybody who's voting yes, okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, so there's no change in the vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, number 12,
Which one?
I'm not sure they have that,
Whereas what?
that they have developed the necessary cognitive abilities to engage in the same views.
And there's a footnote on, that was
But
that.
that, but to me,
Did you click the footnote and read the paper?
I tried. It didn't come up on my computer the right way. But I have.
Which is why we send out resolutions at least 2 days before their meeting.
And King voted and said yes.
And we already voted.
Yeah, I mean, it just. Mark,
All right.
the way you write things is not the way I would write things. That doesn't make them, it's wrong for me to. Get everything.
I love your resolutions, King, because they're like 3 sentences and they get straight to the point. However,
Yes.
I do not have the luxury of just writing what I think things should say. I have to always have supporting evidence and information. I am not, the legend that you are.
No, but
And-
there
There
has to be more information, I think.
I did the work.
But that's not the problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't- I really don't, I really do think.
What do you
the perfect
happen if you showed up with a 3-sentence resolution with no supporting evidence at community board 2?
Get eaten alive.
You get eaten alive.
All right, guys, it's 8:16. Do we have any other, we voted, so all is good?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for this wonderful discussion and fine tuning results. And tomorrow is CB2 exec and Thursday's full board. So you'll hear about this resolution again tomorrow. And thank you all for coming and participating. Thank you. And with that.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good night.
How do you, and use your mouth and do any reading.
I can do it here. Okay. You want to- Okay, thank you. Goodbye. Good night.